After him, the major personality who comes to India, it is Lord William Bentinck. Bentinck is very different from other governor generals. Okay, so UPSC asks a question on him that there was a change, or there was a wind of change with the arrival of Lord William Bentinck, because his major focus was on reforms. His major focus was on social reform, financial reform, economic reforms. Large number of reforms were done by him. Even though he also captured few territories, but he did not fight any major wars. The major wars will be fought after him, not during his time period. So let us understand his career. So he was a soldier first, then he became a member of parliament. He was also having a prior Indian experience because he was governor of Madras in 1803. He was reform oriented, laid down various progressive social reforms, and he believed in the welfare of Indian subject. In fact, there is a specific theory a philosophy known as utilitarian. This philosophy believes in maximum happiness for maximum number of people. Okay, so this theory was becoming popular in England. People like Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, these two were the main people behind the theory of utilitarian. And they used to say that if you want maximum happiness for maximum number of people, then you have to create a forward kind of law. And law could be used as a weapon to reform any society. So they were always thinking कि भाई कुछ ऐसा काम करना चाहिए. Codification of laws should be there. If haphazard kind of governance will be there, maximum number of people are always going to suffer. So that's why this theory of utilitarian was something which influenced Lord William Bentinck. In fact, he wrote a paper, he wrote a letter also, and he said that it is you who is going to govern in fact. I am only going to govern in name. So he sent this letter to J.S. Mill and tells him कि भाई आपके नाम पे मैं तो जाके बस काम करने वाला हूँ, ठीक है? I'm not going to rule in fact. In fact, why rule in fact? Because whatever work he was doing, he was influenced by the philosophy of utilitarian. And this utilitarian philosophy could be seen in his various achievements, which we'll discuss about. Okay, so याद रखना, during his time we see a change in philosophy. His major achievements is like, number one, he supported Thomas Monro in his change of revenue administration in Madras, the Rayatwari system. One of the biggest reform in India, it was the abolishment of sati. Despite opposition from large number of conservative people, he still abolished sati in 1829. Work to suppress female intensified as well as human sacrifice. So these kinds of sacrifices were done in Indian society which were affecting human rights, and he was somebody who was against them. Next, very important change, introduction of Western education system. So for the first time an education policy was built in for Indians, and he believed that it is the Western education which is going to lead us towards modernity. So that's why in 1835 he took that resolution which will going to change the overall education system of India. He separated judiciary from the executive, further improving the legal administration. So let us try to understand about him. These are the highlights of his career. If we see briefly his policy towards the Indian states, so what he did, he was following a policy of non-intervention and non-aggression, which was way different than that of Lord Hastings. Hastings was very aggressive in nature, but he was somebody who believed in minimum level of interference, and that too only when required. So whenever there was misgovernance or when there was a kind of rebellion, then only the state was annexed. Like Mysore, where Krishna Raja III resorted to power, okay, by Wellesley. Initially good governance, but young Raja's incompetence lead to various kinds of revolts, and that's why the British took over the administration, and it was kept under one of the commissioner, Sir Mark Cuban. Then Kachar area, here the British protection after the first Burmese war, the Treaty of Yangbo, and annexed in 1832 to lack of here after Raja's assassination. Area of Jaintia as well as Kurg, they were also annexed by him. But no major warfare was done during the time of Lord William Bentinck. ऐसे कोई बहुत बड़ा war नहीं लड़ा इन्होंने. but still what do we say कि कुछ तो there is continuation of the previous governor general. So these are the areas which were continued to be taken over by the British in spite of his policy of non-intervention. Then he was somebody who was a believer in diplomacy. He tried to create good contact with Punjab. He met with Raja Ranjit Singh at Rupert and tried to discuss lots of things, how eventually they can live in peace. Indus Navigation Treaty was signed, okay, and this was in fact signed with the Amirs of Hyderabad or the area of Sindh. Hyderabad is an area also in Sindh, okay. So the Amirs of Sindh region, it was signed with them, and similar commercial treaty, and he tried to create a buffer state, Afghanistan, between British India and potential invaders. The invaders, the word here, it means Russians. Russians had increased their influence in Iran, and as all of us know, Iran is having very close borders with Afghanistan. So he wanted that Afghanistan should remain neutral, because if Afghanistan will come under the control of any of the potential one can say enemy of the British, then eventually it is going to have a major impact on India's security. So to preserve the security of India, they always wanted a neutral area, and that was going to be Afghanistan. In fact, after he is going to go away, we'll see the beginning of the first Afghan war starting from 1839. He'll go back in 1835. After his reign, 4 saal baad, we'll see the beginning of the Afghan war also. During his reign, we also see the coming of Charter Act. Charter Act of 1833 is very, very important. Why it's important? Because it changed the complete nature of the British East India Company. Now what they become? They become a purely administrative body. All the trading monopoly, okay. There was a Charter Act of 1813 also. This 1813 Act has taken away the commercial monopoly of the British East India Company. Only two things were left where they were given monopoly. कि भाई अभी इनमें आप सिर्फ आप trade कर पाओगे, and that was tea and trade with China. Only two things were left. But by 1833, even those were taken away. So this company now became a purely administrative body. है ना, कोई commerce का काम नहीं करोगे आप. You're going to focus on governance, and that's why it becomes very, very important. A landmark legislation impacting the British governance in India. And as I have already to discuss with you, this was affected by the ideas of utilitarian, which includes people like Jeremy Bentham as well as John Stuart Mill. The first important thing, end of companies, commercial activities. The transition is now towards a governing agent of the British Crown. Second, Governor General was now, his authority was enhanced. Previously, they were having the title of Governor General of Bengal. Now, the Governor General of Bengal became Governor General of India. In fact, Lord William Bentinck was the first one to hold this title. So he shifted from Governor General of Bengal, last Governor General of Bengal, and the first Governor General of India. The Charter Act of 1833 is very, very important for all of us. Okay, in our constitutional history also. Now, the focus was going to be on law and order. That's why, for the first time, T.B. Macaulay, he was now appointed as a law member, and in fact, even a law commission was appointed under his leadership. This law commission was going to compile Indian Penal Code, okay, Police Act, all the various acts which are now governing our criminal justice system or our civil justice system. This was compiled by the law commission, and initially it was held by T.B. Macaulay. Indian Penal Code जाके 1860 में finalize होता है, but it takes 2-3 decades. Okay, but the process starts from now itself. Equality in principle. This 1833 Act tried to create a kind of balance between the British and the Indians. Okay, so what they did? The Act abolished discrimination based on religion, birthplace, color in holding public office. This paved the way for eventual Indianization of Indian civil services, though the process was slow. Okay, provision आया, but ये operationalize नहीं हो पाया. Why? Because the court of director were against it. And finally, this could be done only by the Act of 1853. And after the revolt of 1857, eventually we see the changing of the character of Indian civil services, and more number of Indians are going to become part of it with the period of time. It marked a turning point in British rule, established a more centralized and bureaucratic administration, led to legal reforms and idea of equal opportunities, and finally it also led to changes of the Charter Act of 1853. In fact, the Charter Act of 1853 did not assign any specific time period after which the charter was going to be renewed. Normally, the charter was renewed in 20 years. जैसे कि 1793, फिर 1813, फिर 1833, after 1833 to 1853. In 53, no years were mentioned. When we are going to give you the next charter, and eventually in between we have the revolt of 1857, and that's why finally in 1858 this company was sold off. No, at least their jurisdiction in India was ended, and finally it was privatized with the period of time. Now, if we see his period, it's a period of change. What kind of changes do we expect? Like number one, large number of financial reforms, which includes number one, to improve the state budget. He reduced salaries of the officers, allowances of the official, eliminated all kind of unnecessary staff positions, abolished the double bhatta system, okay, for the troops in military, and by his departure, the treasury was having surplus of 1.5 million. 1.5 million surplus says something about him, that he was able to ensure economy in the expenditure. उसको बचा सके जितना हो सकता था. Second, he also led administrative reforms. His reforms in his political accumulation. Then judicial system. He abolished the inefficient provincial court of appeal established by Cornwallis to reduce cost as well as backlogs. उनको भी उन्होंने change कर दिया. Then language in the court, this was also changed. उन्होंने क्या किया? The Persian language, it was changed. In the lower courts, local languages could be utilized. In the higher court, there was only one language, that is English. So English was now going to be utilized for better communication and accessibility. Revenue system, initiated revenue settlements also in the northwestern part of India, which will eventually take the shape of Mahalwari system. And this Mahalwari system will be initially under the launch of Robert Martin Byrd. And what will be the settlement period? 30 years. It means in every 30 years you can increase the revenue to be collected from the farmers. And he involved direct settlements with the cultivators or landowners, bypassing the intermediaries. And this system was known as Mahalwari. Then social reforms, as all of us know, the number one social reform, we put abolition of sati. I hope all of you know the meaning of sati. It means once the husband dies, the woman was required to commit self-immolation, है ना, आग में खुद को भी उनकी अस्थियों के साथ में, she was also going to give her life. Now, when we think about sati from today's perspective, we feel like there was only one woman, but that was not the time. In those times, it was not about monogamy or one person, one husband, or one man is having one wife. This was not the situation. Polygamy was at its peak. There was a specific Brahmin category in the area of West Bengal, Kulin Brahmins. They used to have 50-60 wives. Okay, the research was done that there was a gentleman of 88 years. He was having 88 wives. And the youngest one was of only 8 years. Youngest was of only 8 years. Now suppose if in that case that girl has to commit sati, doesn't make any kind of sense? Does not make any sense. That's why this was a very important reform which was done. In fact, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, okay, one of his cousin sister had commit sati. That's why he could not sleep at nights. That's why he eventually went towards, and he was one of the biggest person, one of the most important personality who was in the support of abolition of sati. So that's why when Lord William Bentinck took this decision, this was a very important decision for reforming Indian society from the above. Why from the above? Because people will take more time. Whenever the government, okay, can take the forward steps, तो उसको आना चाहिए. Like suppose when we abolished untouchability just after independence, that was a forward step because government can do it in one go. But the people will take more time to get accustomed to the new kind of equation in the society. So here the same thing happened. Then he also went for the suppression of thugs. Okay, so various organized gangs of hereditary robbers, murderers, they were took down. They disguised themselves as pilgrims or merchants, and their activities they had increased after the Mughals' decline, and he systematic brought a capture and punishment for them. And next, very importantly, the prevention of female infanticide. So the newborn girls, okay, they were tragically brought down because of various kinds of beliefs and he took steps to eradicate this practice, particularly in areas like Rajputana, Punjab, as well as Malwa. Mostly North India, because as all of us know, North Indian society are more patriarchal in comparison to the South Indian society. So here he also took these steps with respect to female infanticide, declared it a punishable offense, and nobody was allowed to have child sacrifices. Introduction of English education, again very, very important. When we look towards education, the first step which was taken by this company towards education, it came in the Act of 1813. The Charter Act of 1813 set apart a sum of 1 lakh rupees, है ना, कि 1 लाख रुपए दो और पूरे इंडिया को पढ़ा दो, देखते हैं कितना पढ़ लेते हैं लोग. So 1 lakh rupee were to be given to India, but the problem was they did not know what should be the syllabus, what should be the medium of instruction, and that's why from 1813 till 1833 ब्यूरोक्रेसी की पावर होती है, 20 साल के लिए कुछ काम ही नहीं है. So for 20 years they kept on deliberating on this, कि क्या सिलेबस होगा, क्या लैंग्वेज होगी, है ना, कमिटी पे कमिटी बैठाने में लगे रहे. There was a committee on public instruction that carried out these activities. So finally William Bentinck said enough is enough, and he appointed Macaulay to head the committee. In fact, there's a very famous debate between the Anglicist versus Orientalist. Anglicists were those people who were supporting English education and learning about the West, and then there were Orientalists who wanted Indians to learn about themselves first, and that too in their own mother tongue, in their indigenous languages. And finally, if we see the case of William Bentinck, he was more accustomed towards the Anglicist, and Macaulay also, he was a supporter of English education. So that's why he took a final decision in 1835. It is also known as Macaulay's Minute. Okay, and then finally this education policy was adopted in 1835. Committee under Lord Macaulay to make recommendations for the promotion of education. In his report, Macaulay emphasized the promotion of European literature and science through English medium to the people of India, and the recommendation was wholeheartedly accepted by Bentinck, and in his resolution 1835 he made English the official and literary language of India. The same year he also founded the Calcutta Medical College. And this is how some building blocks for the education were also set up by William Bentinck. So he was a very different Governor General in comparison to others. If we see his estimate, he was a very straightforward, honest person, went for various kinds of reform like abolition of sati, introduction of education, and it is gratifying to know that he acted where others had already just talked about, that we want welfare of Indians. Then after him we see the coming of Lord Auckland. Lord Auckland was the one from 1836 to 1842. So he was the person who fought the first Anglo-Afghan war, and this Anglo-Afghan war continued, and till in 1842 eventually he was called back to England कि भाई वापस आ जाओ, तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा. Then they sent Lord Ellenborough. So Ellenborough went and he ended the Afghan war. He also annexed Sindh. In 1843 he annexed Sindh because Sindh was an easy target. It was not having any powerful person. 3 armies used to rule it from different places, from the area of Hyderabad, Khairpur, and they were taken over. The most important personality who ensured the annexation of Sindh, you know his name? There was a person, Charles Napier. Charles Napier, naturally he was the resident, और resident का काम क्या होता था? To capture the territory. जब मन करे तब capture कर लेना. So anyway, so he captured it, and why he captured it? Because they had lost the Afghan war. They wanted to show the world that we are invincible even till today. So in 1843, Sindh was annexed by Charles Napier. There's a very famous statement which Charles Napier says that we have no right to seize Sindh, but yet we shall do so, and a humane piece of rascality it will be. कि हम सब rascals हैं, लेकिन ठीक है, humane piece of rascality it's going to be. So that's something which he said in 1843. After him, successor was Lord Hardinge from 1844 to 48, and during his time period we see the first war with the Punjab. Punjab was having strong personality, but Ranjit Singh died in 1839. the moment Ranjit Singh died, the whole of Punjab, it went into disarray. And within a decade, by 1849, 2 wars were fought and it was captured. Okay, so this is a sad story. At the moment Ranjit Singh died, in fact, the policy of Ranjit Singh with respect to British, it was very defensive in nature. He always tried to be a second fiddle to the British. He never took very extreme action. In fact, Satluj was like a boundary between the Punjab and the British. And that's how the moment he died, British waited and watched for a while. And the moment they saw that ki bhai nahi, this area is going into disarray and we cannot capture Afghanistan. So if we cannot capture Afghanistan, at least we should capture Punjab. It's going to be our second line of defense. कि defense में at least Afghanistan में क्या होगा हमसे नहीं पता. We have already lost the war in 1842. But this area we can bring under our control. That's why Punjab became very important. The first war was fought by Lord Hardinge, and the second it was fought by Lord Dalhousie. Dalhousie is going to be responsible for fighting the second Anglo-Punjab war or Anglo-Sikh war. Now,
a very good evening to all of you. I'm Vikas Ahlawat. I'm a former civil servant. I was able to crack UPSC twice. In fact, in 2018, I was able to get highest marks in history optional, and they were around 324. So this year, I'm coming up with a series which I'm calling Self-Study History Optional. इस series में 100 से ज़्यादा वीडियो होने वाले हैं, which are going to cover the different nuances of ancient, medieval, modern as well as world history. So those of you who are preparing for 2025, register करिए and try to get the maximum out of this specific initiative of ours. So at Prepcareer IAS, we are producing results from last many years. 2023 में बहुत सारे टॉपर्स हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट से थे. 2022, 21 हर साल बहुत अच्छे टॉपर्स यहाँ से निकले हैं. And they have been able to get very good marks in history optional. So those of you who are thinking कि यार start करके कितना कर पाएंगे कितना नहीं कर पाएंगे, we already have achievements with us. I was able to achieve, my students are achieving, and you can be the next. इन सेशंस में क्या होने वाला है? नंबर 1, विल बी फोकसिंग ऑन फाउंडेशन ऑफ बेसिक कंसेप्ट्स स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम व्हाट इज हिस्ट्री, व्हाट इज हिस्टोरिकल पीरियड, व्हाट इज प्रोटो हिस्ट्री, व्हाट इज प्री हिस्ट्री, बेसिक लेवल. ओके. सेकंड, अलाइनमेंट विद यूपीएससी सिलेबस. जितना भी हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल का सिलेबस है वो 51 पार्ट्स में डिवाइडेड है. सो वी आर गोइंग टू अलाइन ईच एंड एवरी कंसेप्ट विद द सिलेबस इटसेल्फ. Number 3, we're going to focus on answer writing. All of you know कि जो मेंस है वो ऑब्जेक्टिव नहीं होता है, वो सब्जेक्टिव लेवल पे होता है, और आप सब लोगों को आंसर राइटिंग सीखना शुरू करना पड़ेगा, है ना. वी डू नॉट हैव टू मच ऑफ टाइम, तो जिस स्टार्टिंग से ही आंसर राइटिंग शुरू करेंगे. एंड नंबर 4, द ओवरऑल पैकेज इज़ वेरी होलिस्टिक इन नेचर. तो अगर आप इसको अच्छे से कर लेते हैं तो जो बेसिक लेवल फाउंडेशन हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल की वो कंप्लीट हो जाएगी. यू आर गोइंग टू गेट मैनी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स अलॉन्ग विद दिस. ओके. 100+ सेशन है, चारों पार्ट कवर होंगे. थीम वाइज सेग्रीगेटेड डायग्राम, फ्लो चार्ट, जितने भी इंपॉर्टेंट एनसीईआरटीज हैं. देखो, अगर हम सारी एनसीईआरटीज को कंबाइन कर दें, एंशिएंट, मिडेवल, मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड ऑफ वेरियस बोर्ड्स ऑफ इंडिया, तो 25 से 26 एनसीईआरटी निकल के आती हैं. उन सबको हमने कोहेरेंट फॉर्म में डिज़ाइन किया है सो दैट यू कैन लर्न द बेस्ट फ्रॉम दैट. ओके. बिकॉज देखो, हिस्ट्री में रिसर्चेज चलती रहती हैं. अभी तमिलनाडु की जो एनसीईआरटीज हैं, दे आर मोर इंपॉर्टेंट इन कंपेरिजन टू द रीसेंट हिस्ट्री देन द प्रीवियस हिस्ट्री, जो कि आर एस शर्मा वगैरह, सतीश चंद्रा या फिर बिपिन चंद्रा ने लिखी हैं. That's why we are covering all the NCERTs, and that's why 100+ सेशंस हो जा रहे हैं टोटल मिला के. देन 30+ वैल्यू एडेड आपको डॉक्यूमेंट मिलने वाले हैं, डेडिकेटेड आंसर राइटिंग सेशन मिलेंगे, जूम सेशंस भी करेंगे बाद में, ताकि आप लोगों की जितनी भी डाउट्स हों विद रिस्पेक्ट टू लर्निंग दे कुड बी सॉल्व्ड. ओवरऑल जो है आपको क्लास की पीपीटीज मिलेंगी, कंसेप्ट लिस्ट मिलेगा, पीवाईक्यूज, जितने भी पीवाईक्यूज हैं उनको अच्छे से हमने डिज़ाइन कर दिया ताकि आप सब उनको अच्छे से पढ़ सकें. माइंड मैप मिलेंगे पूरे सिलेबस के, वर्कबुक और लर्निंग असाइनमेंट्स मिलेंगे, एंड सेल्फ असेसमेंट टेस्ट, सो दैट वंस यू लर्न समथिंग तो साथ में उसको एटलीस्ट इवेल्युएट भी करना चाहिए ना, कि भाई हमें कुछ समझ में आया भी है, नहीं आया, एटलीस्ट जितना रिक्वायर्ड है वहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं या फिर नहीं पहुँचे हैं. तो आपको करना क्या है, व्हाट वी नीड टू डू दैट, सबसे पहले आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए. ठीक है. आपको एक स्पेसिफिक गूगल शीट मिलेगा, उसमें आप रजिस्टर कर लीजिए. देन एज ऑल ऑफ अस अंडरस्टैंड हर किसी के पास लिमिटेड स्लॉट्स हैं, तो आपको एक स्पेसिफिक कॉल आएगा एंड दैट इज समथिंग विच वी आर कॉलिंग एट स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस. बिकॉज अगर हमें आपको ये सारी सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड करनी है, द नंबर ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स विच वी कैन हेल्प दे आर ऑलवेज लिमिटेड इन नेचर. सो academic counselor is going to call you, they're going to help you out, they're going to understand आपकी रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है. हो सकता है आप कॉलेज के फर्स्ट ईयर में हो, सेकंड ईयर में हो, थर्ड ईयर में हो, और यू मे हैव ऑलरेडी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर सम टाइम एंड यू आर नॉट गेटिंग द डिजायर्ड रिजल्ट. तो इसलिए हमें स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस चाहिए होगा. एंड फाइनली ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दिस यू आर गोइंग टू गेट द बेनिफिट ऑफ दिस प्रोग्राम.